Hello! If you're watching this video, it's because you've probably encountered those anxious and compulsive thoughts that seem to have a life of their own. I understand how challenging this can be. Many of us would like to simply press a button and eliminate these negative thoughts, but the reality is a bit more complex. It's not so much about getting rid of them, but rather learning to better manage these ideas that invade our minds and affect us so deeply. Thinking about completely eliminating these thoughts can even lead us to more frustration because, let's be honest, the human brain is a thinking machine, and not everything it produces is entirely under our control. So what can we do? We can develop strategies to cope with these thoughts in a way that minimizes their impact on our daily lives. Throughout this video, I will share with you 4 practical steps to help combat the thoughts that fuel anxiety and depression. These methods are based on evidence and real experiences of people who, just like you, sought ways to live better. First step, recognizing the nature of thoughts. Our brain is a thought factory that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's vital to understand that many of these thoughts are just automatic reflexes and don't necessarily reflect reality or who we are. Recognizing this ephemeral and often illusory nature of thoughts can be a major step in the fight against anxiety and depression. For example, have you ever caught yourself thinking, "I will never get better," or "I am a failure"? These thoughts are like old habits of our brain, which tries to protect us, but sometimes ends up limiting us. Questioning these thoughts is crucial. One technique I often recommend is to write these thoughts down and then challenge them with questions like, "Is this really true? Can I find examples that show the opposite?" Sharing these thoughts with trusted people can also be very revealing. Often, when we talk about our thoughts and hear someone else's perspective, we realize that they may not be as accurate or useful as they seemed to be in our head. A cousin of mine shared how he constantly felt inadequate at work. When he discussed these thoughts with colleagues, he was surprised to discover that many of them admired his dedication and skills, which helped him reevaluate his negative self-image. By becoming more aware of these thought patterns and learning to question them, you can start to see a significant change in the way you interpret your experiences. This is a powerful skill, because by changing the internal narrative, you change the way you feel and how you react to the situations around you. It is important to broaden our understanding of how they influence our emotions and behaviors. Thoughts are like seeds. Depending on which we allow to germinate in our mind, they can grow and become beautiful gardens or barren lands. The key is to cultivate a garden that sustains us rather than drains us. As you get used to the habit of questioning your own thoughts, you begin to notice patterns. Perhaps you discover that certain themes or worries arise more frequently than others. This is not just a chance to understand what troubles you, but also an opportunity to address these issues more deeply. For example, if you often find yourself worried about rejection, it might be helpful to explore where this fear comes from and how it has shaped your social interactions and self-esteem. In addition to questioning and discussing these thoughts, another useful practice is cognitive redirection. When a negative thought arises, try consciously replacing it with a more neutral or positive one. For example, if you think, "I never do anything right," you could change to, "I have difficulties in some areas, but I also have many skills and successes on which I can rely." This technique of substitution is not about denying difficulties, but about balancing the perspective we have of ourselves and our lives. This process of recognition and redirection of thoughts is not something that happens overnight. It is a continuous practice, requiring patience and understanding. However, by investing time in this exercise, you can observe a decrease in the frequency and intensity of anxious or depressive thoughts, creating space for a more balanced and satisfying life experience. Second step, meditation. Starting a daily meditation practice might seem like a cliché these days, but the truth is that this ancient technique has incredible power to transform our minds. When you meditate, you learn to observe your thoughts without attaching to them. This is especially useful for combating anxiety and depression because these states are often fueled by a continuous cycle of negative thoughts and harsh judgments about oneself and others. Meditating is like training your brain to become stronger and more skilled at recognizing when you're starting to follow those tortuous paths of thought that lead to stress and sadness. Imagine that each meditation session is a training session for your mind, helping it to develop a solid foundation of calm and presence. A practical example that illustrates this well came from one of my friends who started meditating regularly. He described how, initially, it was difficult to even sit still for 5 minutes. But, with constant practice, he began to notice a change. The thoughts were still there, but the way he reacted to them was different. He learned to observe them as if they were clouds passing through the sky of his mind. Present, but not permanent. Including meditation in your daily routine does not require special equipment or a lot of time. It's something you can do for just a few minutes every day and still see significant results. You can start by finding a quiet place, sitting in a comfortable position, and simply focusing on your breathing. Each time your mind wanders, and it will wander, gently bring your focus back to your breath. That's all. Simple, but profoundly effective. Third step, acceptance of emotions. Accepting your emotions, especially those that are uncomfortable like anxiety or sadness, is a crucial step in managing negative thoughts. Often we try to fight these emotions or pretend they don't exist, which only makes them gain more strength. Acceptance, on the other hand, allows us to deal with them more effectively and less painfully. When we talk about acceptance, we're talking about allowing these emotions to exist without trying to change them immediately. This doesn't mean that you should resign yourself or suffer passively. On the contrary, it's an act of courage. Accepting is not liking, agreeing, or wishing things were this way. It's simply recognizing what is present without judgment. A clear example of this can be seen in a situation of mourning. A person who loses a loved one may feel a wave of sadness and despair. Trying to suppress or deny these feelings can lead to even greater suffering. On the other hand, recognizing the sadness and allowing oneself to feel this emotion can, paradoxically, help relieve the pain and facilitate the healing process. Accepting your emotions also implies understanding their messages. Often, our emotions are telling us something important about our lives and the changes we may need to make. For example, anxiety might be a sign that we're overwhelmed and need to adjust our pace or maybe reassess our priorities. Practicing acceptance can start with small steps. When you feel a strong emotion, try to give yourself a moment to simply breathe and acknowledge what you're feeling. Tell yourself, "I'm feeling anxiety right now, and it's okay to feel this. I will allow this emotion to be here with me." Over time, this practice can help reduce the intensity of negative emotions and increase your ability to cope with them more calmly and effectively. It is essential to understand how this practice can be deepened and integrated into our daily lives more effectively. Full acceptance of emotions is a pathway to better understanding our feelings and, consequently, our reactions and behaviors. A valuable technique in this process is meditation focused on emotional acceptance. During meditation, you can direct your attention to the emotions that are arising. Instead of trying to control or judge these feelings, observe them as if they were external objects to you. See them pass through your consciousness without clinging to them. This can help create a healthy distance between you and your emotions, allowing you to see them more clearly and with less reactivity. Another important aspect is the internal dialogue that accompanies our emotions. Often our minds are filled with criticisms and judgments that can worsen what we feel. The practice of speaking to yourself in a kinder and more understanding way can transform this internal dialogue. For example, replacing self-critical thoughts like, "I shouldn't be feeling this way," with acceptance thoughts like, "It's normal to feel this given the situation," can make a big difference in how you experience your emotions. In addition, sharing your emotional experiences with trusted friends or a therapist can also be a way to validate your feelings. Just the act of verbalizing what you're going through can be extremely therapeutic. It's common to discover that other people have gone through similar situations and can offer support and understanding. And it's also helpful to remember that acceptance is a process, not a destination. There will be days when it will be harder to accept your emotions, and that's okay. Acceptance is not about perfection, but about practice and progress. Over time, This ability to accept and live with your emotions can become a source of strength and serenity, helping you navigate life's challenges with greater balance and resilience. Fourth step, amplification technique. Amplification is a powerful technique that can transform the way we deal with repetitive negative thoughts. Instead of letting these thoughts dominate us and drag us down, we can use amplification to lessen their emotional impact and even find humor in them. This technique involves exaggerating the thoughts to the point of ridicule. For example, if you have a recurring thought that everything will go wrong, imagine yourself as a character in a comedy film where you predict comic and absurdly improbable disasters, like a meteor falling right in your backyard just as you decide to have a barbecue. The goal is to see how unrealistic and exaggerated this thought can be, which helps break the cycle of taking these thoughts so seriously. Using amplification does not mean that you are ignoring your problems or disrespecting your feelings. On the contrary, it is a way to gain a new perspective on the thoughts that tend to cause stress and anxiety. By ridiculing these thoughts, you reduce the power they have over you. An interesting case that illustrates this technique was a client who often worried about the judgment of others. He began to imagine these judgments as if they were narrated by an exaggerated sports announcer, commenting on every little action of his as if it were a crucial sporting event. This not only relieved the anxiety he felt, but also helped him laugh at himself and see how unlikely these harsh criticisms were. Incorporating amplification into your daily life can be as simple as starting to question negative thoughts with a touch of humor. Ask yourself, what would be the worst possible scenario? And then take that scenario to the extreme. This approach can relieve the emotional tension that these thoughts generate and allow you to deal with them in a lighter, more manageable way. By practicing these 4 steps, meditation, recognizing the nature of thoughts, accepting emotions, and using the amplification technique, you will be equipped to handle the thoughts of anxiety and depression in a healthier and more effective way. These techniques offer new ways to understand and react to the complexities of our thinking and emotions, enabling a fuller and more balanced life.